fishing? Okay, gone fishing. It's called gone fishing. Gone fishing. Gone fishing. Yeah.
Today, my guest on the tapes, we have a band called Lawndale. They are an instrumental surf rock band from the South Bay in the Los Angeles area. They've been going at it for more than 4 decades. They have ties to SST Records, of course, with Greg Ginn from Black Flag. So before we get into the history, we have 2 members here. We might have a couple other members join, but let's have you guys introduce yourself and tell what you guys play in the band Lawndale.
Dave Childs, drummer, and it's me. And Jack here is the guitar player, songwriter. So I met these guys back in '84, I think it was.
Okay.
We had a couple other guys who were in the band at the time too,
right.
And but I think I was Jack. There might have been another drummer for a few months or something, but we had a few people trying different times, but it didn't work, I guess. So.
Since you two are like the original members, tell me a little bit about, I was reading, but tell me about Rick Lawndale. I guess Rick Waddell was his name, but he changed his name to Rick Lawndale, and he was like one of the founding members as well. Are you guys still in touch with him, or what's the relationship with you guys?
Well, we did a gig with them back in 2008, I guess. Because we kind of reformed. It was broken up for a while in the 90s, and then I owned this bar called Liquid Kitty at the time in the 96 to 2016, and so we were doing these punk rock barbecues, kind of like basically just old school friends of mine playing we'd do like 1 a year or 2 a year, and it was in the summer on a Sunday afternoon, and we had these all bands like Saccharine Trust and just all kinds of cool old friends, and so we got these guys to reform, and we were playing, but then and so Rick was in it, Steve was in it, Jack and I. But then I hurt my neck, and I have this herniated disc. I couldn't play for like 2-3 years. I had to stop. And so then when I tried to get him going again, and then Rick was like, "Look, I live too far away, and I can't do it." He just and you guys stopped and started too much for him. So he lives in the, I guess, Alhambra area or someplace. It was just too hard to drive to West LA, right, to where we were practicing. So he decided to quit. And Rick still plays. I think he has his band, the Rick Lawndale Band, and he does. I don't know where he's not playing around. I don't see him playing around clubs we are at usually, but I know that he's out there.
Dave and I are both the only 2 original members left.
Right.
But the other 2 from the beginning was Rick Lawndale and Steve Housden. And you were asking about Rick Lawndale. Well, Rick Lawndale is the genesis of the band. That's why the band is called Lawndale, even now, 20 million years later. So Rick Lawndale and I went to high school together, actually at North Torrance High.
Okay.
We were buddies from high school. Then time passed, whatever, we scattered around, but we stayed in touch. So Rick and I started writing songs together in early 80s, I guess it was. And then we started jamming with Steve, and then Dave joined us. The songs were just so good. They were mostly at that time was Rick's songs, all Rick's songs.
Okay.
They were incredibly good songs. And then I started writing a bunch too, and by the end there, before Rick left, or before we broke up for a couple, 3, 4, 5 times, it was both Rick and I were evenly the songwriters. He would write half, and I would write about half. Plus, we have a bunch of covers. Our covers all goofy. Anyway, that's why it's Rick Lawndale. That's why it's named. That's why the band is named Lawndale, because it was actually named after Rick Lawndale. His name, correct, is not Lawndale. It is Waddell, but that's kind of his artistic alter ego, Rick Lawndale.
Take me a little bit back to like when you guys were in the early 80s, started playing music. What were the bands that influenced you? And like, obviously your music wasn't punk, or like, was it punk? What kind of music were you playing at that time? Was it the surf rock, you know, psychedelic type stuff you guys are playing now, or was it an early version?
It was a lot more loungy, I think.
Okay.
You know, when I first came in, for one thing, everybody was pretty amateur musician-wise, especially me. So I was learning how to play, and then, you know, just getting a little better as we played more gigs and played practice a lot. But it was kind of lighter. Everything was a little more. I remember those guys would call it soundtrack music. You know, It was like, it's a soundtrack. You know, it wasn't necessarily surf music totally, but it had for sure, it's in there. But we weren't trying to do like, we're doing retro surf instrumentals, which is some really cool stuff people do now, but our band's kind of mixed in with other things, you know, and it had, even at the beginning, it was still like that.
The original genesis, actually, the song, yes, there's some were like conceived as soundtracks, but also Rick used to visit the piano bars of Gardena.
Okay, cool.
Right, so that's where he would like pick up all this like Japanese tones through a lot of songs. Okay. And he was kind of emulating those. So the first 4, 5, 6 songs even have like Japanese themed names. But there's like Japanese cocktail lounge music kind of. But then as soon as you add, you know, bass drums, 2 guitars and bass drums, it starts to sound like rock. And as soon as you have rock music that's instrumental played on Fender instruments with reverb, it sounds like surf. But we never really were strictly surf, and we always veered into all these many different directions, including vocals. Now, Dave, you'll remember there's a version of Lawndale, it was called Game Show, which was like a spin-off, right? So a game show was me, Dave, and Rick again, Rick Lawndale, and a series of a couple other bass players joined us, with Rick playing keyboards as opposed to guitar. So we did have singing. Myself and Rick Lawndale were the singers of Game Show.
Yeah, Game Show.
Is there any of that available that you recorded, or maybe you have like a...
Nothing's available.
Okay. No, it was just like demo tapes and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
We had songs about the backyard party and In with the Out crowd, and it was Do the Barcelona. But yeah, that was technically a different band, but yeah, it was in the Lawndale family, you know.
Yeah,
that sounds cool. Yeah. When you said you were in that version of Lawndale, the early version, or like, you guys are already playing shows. So what kind of shows are you playing? What kind of bands are you playing with?
Oh, originally we were playing a lot of art type, punk rock art scene things, underground LA, you know, Al's Bar. We played with, you know, anything. You know, that's the thing, we could fit in with bands like St. Vitus one night, and then it would be like Insect Surfers, you know, when they came to town or whatever. We had, I remember, Moist and Meaty. There was just these cool, weird underground bands, and then the Anti-Club, we would play there as well. But a lot of Al's Bar, Anti-Club, and different, you know, places around.
Only.
I'm sure there's been so many, but any venues that stick out in your mind that you kind of want to mention where you get cool shows?
Raji's, Al's Bar, Anti-Club, Club Lingerie.
We basically played every underground club you could play, plus everything else.
Weird parties.
Like we were talking about last time, we don't need a PA. We just plug in and play, right? So we can play on a mountaintop. We can play on the beach. We can play in a parking lot. We can play in front of the Lawndale Jewelry and Loan. We can play in a million backyard parties. We could, you name it, we'll play it. We'll play at someone's sister's birthday party. You know what I mean? Like, and grandmas love it too.
There was a lot of gigs like that with parties like San Pedro or art lofts downtown. Before it was the arts district, it was, just deserted at night. Like Repo Man, was filmed there, and it was just like that. It was like nothing's happening. There's this amazing party happening with like 200
and we
people
played with bands. We played with the SST bands before we were signed to SST.
How did that happen?
In the same, like we were just in the same milieu. You know what I mean? We were in the same group of friends and music fans and art people.
Well, for one thing, it was like we played with SWA a lot of times. I don't know how it. One gig we used to do was Dave Travis, who had Cafe Nella later, and he's also in Carnage Asada. He started doing these generator parties up in the Palisades, and he was in high school, I think, at the time, but he had a generator. So there was these fire roads you could hike up, and the bands would come up this other way, and then people would just be told, like, park at this one street and just walk, and go through the woods. And we'd be playing up there with a generator with like, I forget, all the band, DC3, guys like that. And it was like, we'd be up there and just, the cops didn't know where it was because it was just echoing off of the canyons. And I know that we read articles how people were pissed off in the Palisades about this, but there was probably 3 or 4 of these. We called them travesties because it was Dave Travis's thing, and it was always like some problem. Like you either would rain on us, or we'd have to leave, or someone would be lost, and it was always some problem. But they were really, really fun, all night kind of wild parties.
Yeah, it sounds cool. And so, what I wanted to ask is, now you mentioned you guys kind of were already playing with the SST bands, but how did that happen? Where you guys became signed to SST? I mean, were they already aware of you guys? So how did that process happen?
They knew us because we were playing with their bands, and we were in the scene there, and it was kind of just like a natural evolution.
I heard that
like some of their biggest bands, like Sonic Youth, right, Dave? Like when Sonic Youth first came out, 1985, we played with them in their first 2 gigs at Al's Bar and Anti-Club again. I think during that trip, they also played at the desert shows, one of the survival,
there's a friend of ours, Stuart Sweezy, he put on these shows called Desolation Center, which...
Desolation Center, right.
They had 3 desert shows. They had they had several shows in some warehouses, but there was one on a boat called Joy at Sea, and it was in San Pedro with Minutemen, Meat Puppets, and then he got us to play in the front lobby of the boat. It was like a whale watching boat. So when people... We weren't really known as much, but so we're on the front.
It was our second gig.
Yeah, we're barely new, and we're playing on this boat. And then you'd go upstairs after we finished, and people were, then there was a stage up there on the boat, on the deck, where Meat Puppets and Minutemen played. It was incredible, going around the San Pedro Harbor. So then later, this same guy, Stuart, he was telling me, oh yeah, these guys, Sonic Youth, they're really cool. They're from New York. I'm trying to get them I want them to play in the desert, so they're coming out. 2 of them, Thurston and Kim, are coming here. Do you want to go with me and pick them up or whatever? So I don't know if we picked him up at the airport or we just met him at his house, but the 4 of us drove out to the desert to go scout this site, right, to find where to do this desert show. And this was another guerrilla thing, like he had a generator, Stuart did, or he rented one. And there was no permit whatsoever. I mean, got in trouble for it later, but there's a movie. He made a whole documentary about this, by the way, that you can see. But it was Sonic Youth, Meat Puppets, Psycom, which is Perry Farrell's first band, and Red Cross. So, and it was, before that, though, the show, on the way there, I'm talking to these New Yorkers, Thurston and Kim, and they said, oh, yeah, we heard of Lawndale, because I think a friend of ours, Michael Shepard, was talking about us to them or whatever, but he had put out their single, Death Valley 69. So they were really, really cool, and we were talking in the car, and they had never been to LA. This is like, no one knew who they were yet. And
Actually, Kim was from LA, but she had been living in New
yeah,
York.
Kim was from here
We
originally.
got to be very good friends with them.
True, but so I just said, hey, let's do some gigs sometime, and they're like, okay. And then so they came out and played after the Desert Show. They played Anti Club, and we got to be the opening band. And they were using our equipment.
Well, okay.
We had, unfortunately, luckily they didn't use Jack's guitars because they were like hammering nails into the guitars. But yeah, the amps and the that one's Anti Club. But they would use our stuff, and they would just come out here occasionally. So they were really cool. This is before they got big, and then they end up getting on SST. But just to answer your question about SST, we met Chuck Dukowski through all these gigs, right? We were playing, and Swa was playing a lot of gigs, and he was Swa. So we had recorded at Radio Tokyo, this studio in Venice, and we just did like 6 songs or something. And I said, hey, let me just bring it down to Chuck, you know. So I talked to him, and I met him down at SST. I go, here, this demo tape, maybe you guys are interested. And he said he sent it to Greg, and who was with Black Flag out on tour, and they wanted to do it. So they paid for the rest of the recording. So we recorded, 5 or 6 more. That's how it happened originally. Just by meeting him and just saying, hey, here's some music we recorded. You want to check it out? And it ended up working out.
Yeah, very cool. I heard that you guys were one of the first, I guess, non-punk bands that they signed to SST. Is that true or accurate?
Probably, yeah, because right around the time we joined it, after that they just did a ton of cool experimental bands that were not punk rock really. Just interesting, all over the place,
Yeah.
Always August and alternatives and different things like that. And so, but we were kind of one of the earlier ones, I think, yeah. They had, more like Saint Vitus, DC3, Swa, Black Flag, Meat Puppets, Husker Du, and Lawndale is like kind of on a totally different,
Yeah.
spec.
You mentioned Chuck Dukowski, of course, he was a big part of SST, but did you guys have like a relationship with Greg Gang? How involved was he with Lawndale? I mean, I think he was a fan. He played with you guys on one of your albums, right? One song?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he would be on tour all the time because at the time Chuck had quit Black Flag, so it was Kira on bass, and then she quit. But so Chuck was back manning the record label more, and then Greg would be gone. So I didn't know him too well, but he did play. He played on our second record. One time we did a gig and he got up and played with us on that one song. But yeah, normally we didn't really deal with him too much.
But we did play with Black Flag instrumental several times. So Greg Ginn had a version of Black Flag that later became the band Gone, which was all instrumental, crazy, like snarly, freaky stoner rock. I don't know what you'd call it. It was cool. And we played with them several times.
When you guys, you were in the band playing with Gone? Or
we were just like on the bill,
Oh, okay, Lawndale
played. Same bill,
okay.
Right.
It was a loft party we did.
Okay.
But Greg did perform on one of our songs, recordings.
Yeah, no, very cool. And then, were you guys close to any of the other members of Black Flag? I mean, during that time, obviously, I know they were touring a lot, but you guys played a lot of shows. Did you guys, hang out with them, or were you friends with them, or was it just strictly, playing shows with them?
Not really. Yeah, we didn't play with them too much. I mean, we would play with Minutemen more often, and those guys were.
Minutemen a million times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are probably the closest people I would say.
Yeah.
That we knew, but as far as SST or Swa, of course, Philo actually, our guitarist, he was in Swa, and they had several different guitarists, but he was one of the ones. So.
And then Minutemen became Firehose, and we even were bigger than the Minutemen, I guess. And we played with Firehose quite a bit as well.
Right.
Okay. One thing I want to know is, like, back in the day when you guys played with a lot of those SST bands, were there ever any shows where you kind of, I read a lot that, like, people were into you and there was a lot of cool, positive reactions from the crowd, but were there any ever shows where you didn't have the best reaction, or maybe the crowd didn't get you and you kind of just, maybe it wasn't the best show, or any kind of memorable ones like that stand out?
We never got food thrown at us.
Okay, that's good.
We never got spit on by the punk rockers.
There was a punk rocker one time in Orange County or someplace we played, and there was a guy with a mohawk, and it was this kind of stereotype punk rock guy.
Oh, yeah.
It seems silly, like he probably just got the mohawk that week or something, but he was yelling at us, play faster, and he was mad.
Right, I remember that, because we weren't punk rock enough for him.
Harder, I don't know what he wanted. Yeah, but normally, no, we didn't really have too many hecklers or anything.
Yeah.